You ready, Nick? Let's get him. Let's get it on. It's gonna be a little different today. Welcome to the Dribble Podcast, by the way. This episode is episode 27, I believe. I won't so much consider this to be an episode, more so a part of my life that I'm recording for you guys in a booth. Hopefully I can get through this shit and leave this shit in this booth. This shit been on me all week and it's hurting me bad. It's killing me. It really is. It's heavy as fuck. But I need this shit to get up off me and I need to leave it in this booth. So I'm going to go ahead and share the tragedy and trauma that's going on in my life right now. I had an associate who was killed in 2018, September 4th, 2018. He was a paraplegic when he was killed. He was already in a wheelchair. He paralyzed from the waist down when he was killed. It's one of my, hustler associates, homies, whatever. We come up together in the streets, get money together and shit like that. And he was killed in 2018. What was most disturbing by it was the people who took his life. Very, very hard to swallow. I knew these people personally, as I knew the victim, Tony Montana. That's what we called him, Montana. God has a way of teaching us lessons in life, and sometimes he will use someone else's life to teach us a lesson. And I'm glad that my life was never used. I never had to lose my life to teach anyone a lesson or anything like that. But this is kind of like what I got out of all of this. The double cross. The double cross is very real, man. Human beings are fickle people. They change. You never know what could trigger them, what type of insecurities they have, what type of company they keep when they're not around you. The whole title of friend is a very, very precious title that you cannot just give to anyone. We know from growing up, we might have day ones and things like that and people who have been around us the whole time and shit. But the term friend is very, very, very real. And I consider myself to have been a friend to many people in my day. And very few have been a friend to me. But getting back to this case. This case is in the news right now, and because of it, I have to relive everything that happened to my homeboy. I have to read about it in the news and, converse about it with friends of mine and shit like that. And it hurts. It's fucking with me bad, man, because I told this nigga, I told him, Tony, I told you that this cat wasn't nothing to fuck with. He was nobody you should have been fucking with. I told you this in your kitchen. And you gave me a funny look when I told you about this cat. And you left this world not knowing that this guy who you thought was a friend of yours was right outside your house in the alley while these guys were killing you and shit. And it's very, very fucking disturbing. Getting back to the aggravating circumstances. Tone Montana was a big drug boy from around my way, been getting money. He's one of the elites, getting money his whole life. Was rich as a young boy. He was that. Had a big reputation. Somebody I was in the streets getting money with. Tony went to prison and got involved with a guy by the name of Chanello. I was in this jail called Mercer in 2001. Me and a few of my homies with this guy named Chanello. This guy named Chanello, he's from Erie. He's like a bastard case. What I mean by that is he's from the same city as us, but he's of nobody's set. He's from nobody's set, whereas all of us, we from reputed neighborhoods and housing projects and shit like that. He wasn't a part of nobody's set. He was not a part of nobody clique, nobody hood, nothing. He had no ties, no legitimate ties to the streets, because he was in institutions in prison his whole life. Even as a juvenile, he was always confined. He was very, very rarely on the street. Most people might not even know him. If you do know him, you might be someone who's been in institutions. He's one of those guys who grew up in institutions. Anyway, because he didn't grow up with us, or he didn't come up around us or in our era, although he was from Erie, when we was in the penitentiary, I didn't walk with him. I didn't want him around us. None of that. He didn't have certain traits. It was just something about him that I didn't like about him. He was at this jail when I got there, but when I seen the way he moved and shit, I immediately didn't like him. Nobody could tell me any different. Other homies from Erie used to be coming to me like, yo, man, you know, what's up with you and Chanello, man? Why you don't like him, man? He cool and shit. I don't fuck with that nigga, man. It was something about this creep motherfucker, yo. But anyway, when we was in the joint, although he's from the same city of us, he didn't walk with us because he didn't have anything in common with us. Whereas if we walk in the track and shit like that, we probably talking about the same girls, the same environment, you know, the same people, the same, you know, stories and shit. We on the same page, talking about the same bitches, you know, what's going on in the streets and shit. He can't participate in none of these conversations because he has never been on the streets for any significant period of time. He grew up in jail, literally. So what you have is a guy who don't have a father figure, none of that shit, growing up in institutions. And what happens is he start looking up to, glorifying, admiring motherfuckers who he's met in prison. He starts to draw traits and characteristics from niggas that he's met in prison, from different cities and shit like that. He basically has spent his time in prison stealing other niggas' identities and shit. And because we from Pennsylvania, we do a lot of time with guys from Philadelphia. Philly is a big robbery city. Robbery, home invasion, robbery, takedown, robbery, bank robbery. And doing time with these guys, just from the conversations and the environment, some of their practices can rub off on you. It did to me at a point in time. Chanello was someone who was in the institutions forever. Never had a chance to come out and make a name for himself. His whole world is jail. Anything that he knows about the streets, he knows from jail. He don't know no big time hustlers by name or anything like that. They don't know him. He just know them from jail, from seeing pictures of them from jail, hearing their names in jail, hearing stories about them in jail. Boom. My man Tony Clark, Tony Montana, he go to the penitentiary. He ended up in the same jail that I was at, Mercer. I was no longer there. I was gone. When I seen Tone on the streets, welcome home. What's up, my nigga? How you doing? Da-da-da-da-da. What jail you just came from? He said, I was at Mercer. I'm like, oh, who you was up there with? I was up there too. He starts naming the guys that he was up there with. One of the first names that he says is Chanello. I said, you fuck with that corny ass nigga? And my man kind of gave me a funny look like, yeah, that's my young boy and shit. I'm like, that nigga's a bird, man. Like, I'm shocked. Like, I don't fuck with that nigga. And you know, it made an awkward silence in the room. This happened in my man's kitchen when I told him about this shit, right? My man Tone get killed. When they reveal the suspects on the news, it's 3 young boys and Chanello. When I seen a Chanello on the news with these young boys responsible for my homeboy's killing, I told my man and anybody around me, I said, that bitch ass nigga took them young boys up there to rob and kill Tone. Because these young boys, they were young. They was in their teens. They wouldn't know. They're from a whole nother generation. They wouldn't know Tony Montana. They wouldn't know that he was a big drug boy with a reputation, nothing. Had they known the magnitude of who he was, they probably wouldn't have did it. They were in the dark. They were misled by a devilish, sucker-ass, pussy-ass nigga who been in jail all his life. But anyway, while he's in jail, he's absorbing niggas' characteristics. He absorbing people's character and mentality and shit. And not only that, he became a barber. That's the only way you can become a barber in a state prison. You got to be there a minute. He ended up becoming a barber. So when he get out of jail, finally get out of prison, he got the Philadelphia haircut. He got the Philadelphia hand mannerisms and shit. And he talked with the slang. You know what I mean? Blase, blah, talking slick like he's from Philadelphia. This shit that I'm telling you, he used this shit to impress a group of young boys. Had them thinking that he was really like that. That he was this really like super goon, gangster type, take money type dude. When in all reality, he was none of those things. These were just some things that he probably aspired to be from stories he heard in prison. So he putting into these young boys' heads, robbery. He said on a stand, I'm reading this on the news, he said on the stand that he was a father figure to these young boys. He taught them the ways of the streets, taught them what to do and how to move and how to do robberies and shit like that. These young men had no idea that the day that they met this corny motherfucker, that their life was over with. Young boys, pay attention if you're watching this. Be careful of these older guys. Do not let these guys leave an impression on you or put an impression on you, you know what I'm saying, that leads you to believe that you have to act out to fill the shoes of an image that he set in his mind. Yeah, there's many young boys in the penitentiary gonna die there because of an older coward motherfucker put him up to killing somebody or doing some old stupid shit, and it's gonna have them in the penitentiary for the rest of their life. That's what happened to these young boys. This weird, retarded motherfucker don't got no associates, don't got no drug contacts, don't got any of that. You know what I'm saying? He boasting about how he got licks to hit and shit. He don't have any of that because he's not in the drug world. He's not accepted in the drug world. But you know who he has? He has Tony Montana, a guy that he was in prison with. No, they never had any history on the streets. Never did anything. Chanelo's not a hustler. They had nothing, no history on the streets. Tony Montana come to the penitentiary. He don't know Chanelo, but Chanelo know him because Tony Montana's a famous street nigga and shit. So what Chanelo do? He hops straight on dick. He's pushing Tony around. Tony's in a wheelchair. He's pushing him around the prison institution. He's cutting hair. Everything that he could do to get close to him. Tone don't even know, nigga. He using your ass. Tone, I talked to my man Link earlier today, who was in another jail with Tone and Chanelo, and he said Chanelo was pushing Tone around in a wheelchair at this jail. And he said, you know what? None of us fucked with Chanelo like that. Nobody really fucked with him like that, except for Tone. And that's something that Tone always did for whatever reason. Even when he was in the streets getting big money, he always had these off-brand niggas around him. If you did some business with him, he might send one of these niggas to bring it or whatever. They were always around. There was nobody around what you would consider a real nigga. They was never around him at all. At a point in time, I remember him having shooters. But even these niggas was like some corny, off-brand, wanna-be down type motherfuckers with nothing. And he kept these types of dudes around him. And I believe he was fashioning Chanelo to be the same way. He got him pushing him around in a chair in the institution, cutting his hair, and he brought that relationship with him home from jail. Now check how this go. See Tony Montana on the news, he didn't got killed Number one, in order to deal with this guy Montana, you gotta know him. You gotta be from the world and shit. You can't get up on him. He's not gonna, you can't get into his world. You can't do no business with him, nothing like that. Nothing, unless you know him. And when I seen Chanello on the news with these young men, I said, this bitch ass nigga was cutting Tone's hair and had the relationship with Tone, and he put them young niggas on him. I said this when they got arrested in 2018. The trial is going on now. This pussy ass nigga is on the stand right now recounting how he lined my man up. He said that there's no honor amongst thieves, and this backdoor or backstabbing practice is quite common in the street world. And it pissed me off, man. It really upset my stomach because this bitch ass nigga was never in the streets. He don't know the street world. He don't know the laws or anything like that. Because if he had any experiences on being in or spending any time in the streets, he would know that the guys that you steal with, the guys that we rob and steal with, this is family. This is family. You feel me? Like, he would have already known that Tone is a hustler on the highest level. We get money out here. We don't do this. He didn't know the thoroughbred shit. He didn't. He only knew half of the story. Half of the story that he was ever able to attain in the prison system around a bunch of cutthroat motherfuckers who will double cross you. This is what he knew. This is what he knew to be normal. So this pussy ass nigga say on the stand that, you know, that he taught these young boys how to do this shit and the double crossing was normal, and you know there's no honor amongst thieves. I guess it ain't no honor amongst thieves, you bitch ass nigga, because you line someone up who you said was your friend. Then you went and did robberies with some young boys who said you was a father figure to, and they got caught, and now you telling on them. You feel me? If these young men only knew what type of piece of shit, scumbag, perpetrator motherfucker you were, they wouldn't be in the situation they're in right now. They were hungry, they were impressionable, and you took advantage of that. At no point was their minds developed enough to say, why ain't nobody around this motherfucker his age? Where's his niggas at? Where the live niggas at that he fuck with? Like, he talk a good game, but where's his associates? Why? Where's the bitches that he fuck with? None of that. None of that. Because he had none of that. He had nothing going on in the world but this sick ass shit that he cooked up in his mind. And these three impressionable young boys, these sick motherfuckers, they so amateurish at this craft that they not just robbing motherfuckers, they killing motherfuckers. You feel me? They killed another young nigga that I knew prior to my man Tone. They killed several people. They was on one. And they robbed this guy one day, burglarized his house. His name was Isaiah. Burglarized his house. Came back the next day and killed him. I don't even know how that fucking works out. But the predatory shit, you know what I'm saying? And this 38-year-old motherfucker driving these young boys around, sicking them on motherfuckers and shit. And it has ruined my week. I'm beefing with my girl. I'm in a bad place, man. I'm in a bad place because I was so close to this murder case. I told this nigga Tony, I told him, Tony, I said, man, that nigga ain't no good. Don't fuck with him. All my homies that was in the jail with us, they been calling me and shit. They like, you okay, man? Da-da-da-da-da. You never liked that nigga. We didn't understand why you didn't like that nigga. They like, Millie, you sniffed it out. You smelt it on it, man. You know what I'm saying? But my man, Tony Montana, he couldn't smell it on him. He died on the toilet. Paraplegic. He died on the toilet, butt naked, begging for his life. He had no idea that the guy that was pushing him around in his wheelchair in the penitentiary, who he was eating with in the penitentiary, who cut his hair in the penitentiary, who cut his hair on the streets, who he called a friend, brought assassins to his home to rob him and kill him. And it gets more perverted, man, by day, because there more details is coming out. How I guess my man was pleading for his life on the toilet, and he raised his hand up to cover his face, and they fired a shot. The bullet went through his hand and hit him in his chest and bust his fucking heart open and killed him instantly. And that it's just something that I'm having a hard time dealing with. Like Tony Clark wasn't no angel when we was coming up. Like I said, he was a big drug boy. He had shooters. His name was tied to some murders back in the day. I gotta be truthful about this. This wasn't a square. He wasn't a square, but he was one of ours. And this stranger, he didn't know that he was one of ours and shit. He never spent any time with us on the streets, and he came home and he fueled some young men with some larceny that led to my homeboy getting killed. What's crazy about this is that I got another associate named Marv that when we was young, we used to deal with Tone. And I remember back in the day, Tone told Marv, when you come around and shit, man, like, come by yourself. He didn't want him to bring me. He was leery of me. And me and Marv was discussing this. I said, damn, this nigga was telling you don't bring me around and shit. Another motherfucker that he accepted killed him and shit. He said, well, man, Mill, you kind of had a reputation for robbery at a time. I never had a reputation for double crosses, though. You know what I'm saying? And this has me in a very, very bad place. It's fucking with my sleeping patterns. When I wake up, I see his face. I see his smile. I remember the last time we seen each other, he had a Volvo the same color as me. I had a navy blue Volvo at a point in time, and he had one too. And whenever he greeted me, man, it was always that hustler spirit. Yo, talking fast, smiling, kiki. It was always just a pleasure to be around him, and he didn't deserve that. You wouldn't think that someone with his disposition would have that type of fate. It kind of reminded me of a scene in Training Day when they go to the guy's house and dig the money out of the floor and shit, and they kill him and shit. It's really fucking with me. What's crazy is that they have this pussy ass nigga testifying on these young boys, and he was the adult. He was 38 years old when these crimes were committed, and all of them were juveniles. How the fuck do y'all give him the deal? He corrupted morals of minors. He took children to go kill. He gave them face masks and gloves and shit. How do y'all allow him to turn around and testify on some young men that he misguided and took to the gallows and shit? You feel me? Like, I don't understand that. I really don't fucking understand that. He is an adult. They were juveniles. It just don't make sense to me. A few years ago, they made it so juveniles can't serve a life sentence in Pennsylvania. They say sometimes juveniles, their minds aren't developed and shit like that. Something needs to be done with this case, man. Like, it's just, they killed my man for nothing, yo. It was never said what they took from him, man. This is how out of the loop this bitch ass nigga Chanello was. Tone wasn't even on like that no more. He wasn't even on like that no more. You feel me? This nigga got in his mind that he's still the same Tone Montana from the 90s. You feel me? A big lick. And he put some motherfuckers on him. Be careful, man. We got to be careful about who we embrace. I got this term that I've always said and I always stuck by. We grew here. You flew here. You feel me? Be aware of newcomers, man. Be aware of fucking newcomers, man, because they don't be knowing the rules and shit. You know what I'm saying? And you can spare yourself from feeling the way I feel right now. Rest in peace to Tony Montana. I got on here to expel some shit from my body. I hope that I removed a lot of it. I'm gonna go and smoke some weed after this and try to like settle down. But this has been affecting my uploads and just affected my spirits at Gully TV, man, to go back through this, to relive this. And I told him to his face, don't fuck with this nigga. He's a crab, snake, motherfucker. I told him. And I got homies that be saying, man, I remember you hated that nigga, man. It was something about him. Like, I had everybody convinced except for Tony Montana, and it cost him his life. That's all I got right now, man. I ain't gonna put no music on this shit. It's transparent as possible. Something is going on in my life. I'm learning about the double cross. Right before the situation happened, this situation happened with Tony Montana, I got double crossed by somebody in business, somebody that I held dear to me. And it wasn't so much a double cross. He just wasn't who I felt he was. And it set off bells with me that prevented the double cross and shit. You got to be able to identify the crab snake motherfuckers, man, before they bite you. And I lost someone who I was very fond of, thought was a dear friend, but he did something that I knew to be dangerous. Sometimes God will send signals before the actual transgression or before the actual event. God will send you signals and try to wake you up. You know what I'm saying? Don't be blind to the signals. Your body will tell you. Your spirit will tell you. Your body, your everything was created by God. It's a perfect vehicle and vessel and shit. Everything that you need, including the alarm, has already been installed inside of you. So be careful. Please be careful. I wish I could have saved my man Montana. As of right now, I got four close homies that lost their lives to drug robberies. Four fucking homies. David McClendon, Mont Page, Tony Montana, and Stephon Bibbs. They all was killed in the drug world in the course of a robbery. I lived that life. I ain't got no stab wounds, no bullet wounds, no stab marks, nothing like that. I like to say that I was blessed to make it to this point without any of those things happening to me. I'm a product of a praying home, a righteous family, and I try to stand in righteousness so I'm protected at all times and shit. I gotta get up out of here. Anybody that's listening to this is from the heart, and I hope you can extract some information from this. Just be careful with who you call a friend, and don't second guess your intuition. You know what I'm saying? God will send messages to us, and if he send that message to you to get low, make sure you get low. Rest in peace, Philip Clark, aka Tony Montana, and rest in peace the late great Richard Roundtree, who died 2 days ago. Tune into the Dribble Podcast on all streaming sites and follow me on Instagram at GullyTV1. Peace.